With the US and UK governments recently releasing UFO files, the subject has sprung back into public consciousness for debate. But what about those who don't just say they've seen UFOs, but those who say they've ridden on one? Do UFO abductions really happen? Routine is typical in life, and we often live within our own bubbles. Wake up, go to work, come home, ignore the gym, and repeat. We are so focused on ourselves that studies say only 31% of Americans know their neighbors. So if we don't even know what's happening next door, could it be possible that we don't know what's happening in the galaxy next door? And what if our galactic neighbors have decided to come over and borrow a cup of sugar? Or, even more intimately, take us on a ride and probe us? Do UFO abductions really happen? Ever since man gazed at the stars, we've wondered if we're alone in the universe. Our first chance to try to answer that question came at the beginning of the space age in the 1950s, when the Russians launched Sputnik into the skies above. Not long after, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, began. The common belief being that if aliens existed, they would communicate through electromagnetic waves. The Drake equation estimates how many possible active civilizations in our galaxy are trying to communicate with us if they exist. His formula calculates the number to be between 1,000 and 100 million. The SETI Institute was created in 1984 to focus on finding those electromagnetic communications. With all this effort, however, from their own website, the SETI Institute admits to have no actual scientific evidence of extraterrestrial life yet, though they remain hopeful. Despite the SETI Institute's lack of scientific evidence, there are many people who claim to have made contact on a much more personal basis.
My name's Steve Boucher, and I live in St. Catharines, Ontario. We were driving along and all sitting in the back talking, and so then all of a sudden Tom stops the van. And we said, "Why are you stopping?" And he says, "Well, you guys are going to have to take a look at this because you're not going to believe me." So I looked over the seat. We all kind of looked over the seats, and we saw a saucer-shaped craft. Anyway, we start driving ahead, and we're not turning. So I said, "How come we're not turning?" And he says, "Well, look," he says, "I'm turning the steering wheel. I've got it cranked all the way over, and it's not moving." Like we were heading straight for this thing. I said, "Well, put on the brake." And he says, "I'm pumping the brake." He says, "Look, nothing's happening." And the van was still moving toward this thing. And we were approaching it pretty fast to the point where I was bracing myself for impact because I didn't know if we were going to hit it or what, you know. This guy that we picked up at the party, nobody knew. He starts looking around, and he was sitting in the back corner of the van, looking around at us, and all of a sudden he just reached over and grabbed the handle of the door and opened it. So the back door flung open, and we couldn't believe he'd done that. And there was 3 beings there. They were standing in a row, looking into the van, and the first one in the front, which I assumed to be the leader, he got up and came right into the van through the back door. And so we're all panicking, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed for some reason. So he's looking at us, and I could hear these words in my head. And he said, "I'm sorry, but we had to temporarily paralyze you because," he said, "I was concerned for the safety of myself and my crew." He said, "All we want to do is run a few tests on 3 of you, and then we'll bring you back and you can be on your..." And I guess I was still kind of under hypnosis a little bit. And I just caught the end of his words where he said, in the future, he said, "You'll be a great help to your friends and your family." And he said, "Would you like me to bring you back to your vehicle?" And I said, "No, that's okay. I can go back myself." So when I got in, they said, the drummer looked at me and he said, "We've made an agreement." And he said, "We need you to agree to this. We are not going to tell anybody what happened." I said, "Well, I'm not agreeing to that." And he said, "Well, if you tell anybody," he said, "we're just going to deny it and you'll look like an idiot."
Detailed true account or detailed delusions? And why do abductees never have physical evidence? Up next on Proof, if aliens are abducting humans, why are they doing it? We've seen that we've been searching for years for life on other planets. And we've also seen that there is no conclusive proof that it exists, though some people have first-person accounts of such encounters. But what could such encounters mean?
I remember I've been on my back, and I remember my left hand arm being raised and put back down again. But the weird thing about this, no one touched my arm. And I remember the first thing I thought was my arm moved, but I did not tell it to move. As if I'd been hijacked. Yes. So my mind had been hijacked. And the test was to see if they actually had control of me by telling my arm to move remotely. And the very first thought I had was, I didn't tell my arm to move. And I had no feeling of the arm being touched or lifted. So it was at that point the struggle began. Even though that I don't think I even really moved, but I just remember trying to fight the control over me, and it was so overwhelming, so intense. It'd be like I was fully charged battery and I was drained nearly flat in a matter of seconds. I did have a sense of violation, of sexual violation. I remember waking up with that.
Think Christian is the only one who says he's had sex with aliens? Think again. Simon Parks, a councilman in North Yorkshire, claims he has been carrying on an affair with an alien, and even had a human-alien baby hybrid with it. Jazz singer Pamela Stonebrook claims to be having ongoing affairs with aliens as well. But maybe the strangest story to hit the media is that of David Huggins.
Okay, so this story centers around a man by the name of David Huggins. Now here's the gag, okay? David claims that at the age of 17, he lost his virginity to a female extraterrestrial life form. He had been experiencing extraterrestrial encounters from the ages of 8 even till now to this day. One day in 1952, when David was just 8 years old, he remembers his first experience with an extraterrestrial life form. He was sitting under a tree when he heard a voice say, "David, behind you." When he turned around, he said that he saw a little hairy guy walking straight towards him. He claims that the being had very bright, vibrant yellow eyes. Since that day, Huggins claims to have had over 100 encounters with the extraterrestrial. But I think it's pretty safe to say that one of his most memorable encounters was when he lost his virginity. In 1961, David was taking a walk in the woods when he saw a woman sitting under a tree. Suddenly, she gets up and starts walking towards him. And he says, and I quote, "I became very aroused sexually. I couldn't get my pants down fast enough. I fall on the ground and I'm lying there and she's looking at me and I reach my climax," which was quite painful actually. It was very intense. And then I'm looking in her eyes and I passed out. Virginity lost. He described his relationship with Crescent as warm, friendly, and a little strange. When describing her, he said that there was something very beautiful and lovely about her. She had a very nice body. The only thing that was different about her was that she had very long fingernails and she had these very large eyes and her face was very pale. In 1967, David said that Crescent showed up from like a portal-like place in the wall. She was coming from their universe, which he would refer to as their. She's frantically screaming, "The baby's dying, the baby's dying." And David looks at her and he's like, "What baby? What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Your baby." And he's like, "My baby?" And she's like, "Your baby." And he was like, "Well, I gotta go see my baby. Let me go see my baby. Let me help my baby." And so I think the leader takes him to another room in their spaceship. I don't know. So when they open the door, David is looking around and there's all these babies everywhere, like tons, hundreds of babies. Alien babies everywhere. They're all sick or they're dying. They're not, I don't know, they're not well. So David's looking around like just overwhelmed. He's like, "Whose kids are these?" And the guy just looks at him. He's like, "You." And David's like, "What?" What I found to be actually quite interesting was that if you look at Crescent's body, she has the head of an alien and the body of a female human, which would make her a hybrid. So if you think about it, that means that Crescent's mother or father would have had to have sex with a human being, which means that David might not be the only person to have experienced encounters with these aliens and have been seduced by an extraterrestrial.
One of the most controversial figures in the alien conspiracy world is an engineer and government geologist, Phil Schneider.
There are 9 races of alien populations. To look at a human being as a bag of food. They're not cannibals. They don't eat the flesh and the bones and all that kind of stuff. They use the glandular secretions of animals and human beings as a mixture of the vitamins for their food. They get high off of our adrenal gland substances called adrenal chrome. It's something like cocaine to them. There was the created 1954 treaty where Eisenhower signed a pact with the known alien species of the time. There were 3 at the time. And said that we're going to deal in high technology, but you can take a few head of cattle and a few human beings and you can experiment on them.
So we have heard interesting accounts and stories that abductions could really be about creating alien-human hybrids. Next on Proof, our experts on each side give their opinions if alien abductions are science fiction or science fact.
Alien abduction is absolutely real. It is a physical event. People are taken from their normal environments, their home, their cars, taken to what I will call a ship and examined and given different tests. And the cases are all very similar.
I do not believe alien abductions are real, and for lots of reasons more than just the stories don't add up. For an alien race to get to this planet would take extraordinary technology. It would take an extraordinary amount of time. There are lots of physics issues that get in the way with intelligent life being here from another star system.
The typical process of an alien abduction is people driving down the highway. They often see strange lights in the sky, and once they pass it, they don't remember anything. It's not until they reach their destination that they realize that they could be missing 1 or more hours of time.
Missing time is just not realizing how fast time flies. I was on a highway in New Mexico in the middle of the night one time, and 3 hours went by. I looked up at the clock and it was 3 in the morning. I thought it was midnight or something. And it felt like it went by in a second.
Actually, the first known missing time case was in 1961, where Betty and Barney Hill were on vacation coming home. They saw something strange in the sky. They realized that they were home perhaps 2 or 3 hours later. They began having flashbacks, very vivid dreams, nightmares about these creatures looking at them, lying on a table. And it wasn't until Dr. Benjamin Simon, the psychiatrist, put them both through hypnotic regression and found that their accounts were very similar.
The classic example of recovered memories was the McMartin's preschool. It turns out that the interview was steering these kids into all kinds of stories that didn't really happen. They were just making them up because of the suggestion of the interviewer.
When I put someone through hypnotic regression, that's if they're totally ready and I feel that they're ready for it, they find themselves in a very strange place. They'll often say it's a round room that's very sterile environment, as if they're going in for surgery. There's always a table in the center of the room. The aliens that the abductees will describe are the short, 3 to 4 foot tall, no hair, large eyes. Those are the ones that seem to do the abducting.
There are medications that make people hallucinate. There are heart medications that make people hallucinate that they maybe don't know about. There are extreme bodily conditions, fatigue, drugs. People's preconceived ideas, often based from Hollywood or TV, about what an alien should look like, often matches exactly the stories they tell. This makes me very suspicious.
One of the central reasons that abductions are happening is the hybridization program. The men will experience the taking of the sperm. The women will experience the taking of the ova. What I have found with all these cases is that they are using the sperm and the ova and mixing it with alien DNA and producing these hybrid babies.
Why wasn't Muhammad Ali chosen? Why wasn't Jim Thorpe or some extraordinary athlete or someone who was extremely smart, someone who had the genes that you would all say, this is the person that we want to breed with? You don't see that. Why not? That doesn't make sense.
They've described walking down a hallway, being escorted, and seeing along the walls of a certain room, hundreds of tanks of these tiny little fetuses. They look very strange, they look very sickly. So they're part human and they're part alien.
Human beings can only mate with other human beings. There's no reason to think that an alien and a human could have sex and produce an offspring, no more than a human and a mule could have sex and produce an offspring. So this whole breeding thing does not add up. I
mentioned the early case of Betty and Barney Hill. She saw a star map while she was on the craft, and it looked like when our scientists down here studied the map, it looked like they were from Zeta Reticuli. I believe it's Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. Honestly, they could be from a planet that we haven't discovered yet. One of the big problems with intelligent aliens getting to this planet are the distances between Earth and
wherever they would be coming from. This is a big problem in the world of physics, to get a chunk of something like a spaceship going the speed of light. It takes a prohibitive amount of energy to be able to do that and sustain it over long distances.
There are so many reports of military pilots, especially lately, of seeing and flying with these very strange objects.
There are all kinds of things happening in our atmosphere that when people look at it, they don't know what they're looking at, including secret aircraft that our government is working on. There's a group called SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, who has been watching the skies for many years now. And they do this in different ways. One of the ways is listening for radio waves. Now, they have not seen anything that would indicate that there is an intelligent set of aliens anywhere in close proximity.
And bless those people for doing the work, but it really is a waste of time and money, because UFOs are here, they've been here, they're abducting people.
There are hundreds and hundreds of accounts of alien abduction. There are thousands of cameras and telescopes pointed at the sky. Those two worlds do not meet. There is no scientific corroboration of the eyewitness accounts by people who know what they're looking at in the sky.
I know a lot of this makes people very nervous, but it is a reality. UFOs are real, abductions are real.
We've heard compelling arguments from both sides. So, are alien abductions real? And if they are, what does it really mean for humanity? Or do you need more proof?